The bank was originally the Citizens Bank of Orlando, which became the Pan American Bank, the NCNB National Bank, then the Nations Bank, and finally the Bank of America. And the original tenant, which was from 1956, the original tenant from the ground was forever liable for the ground. So even though they assigned the lease several times, and the Leonard Marks was the final assignee, if the final assignee didn't pay, then the original tenant had to pay. Is that too complicated for you? Okay. So Bank of America was on the hook, settled up with Jack, and Jack says, well, I got more than the building's worth, so I'm not going to sue him anymore, meaning Leonard.
Right.
So when I called Mike and I was talking to him, I finally said, well, how much is the other? And he says, I don't know, something like $250,000, $260,000. And I'm thinking, So I said, well, would your dad sell the building? He says, sure. And then there was a hesitation. He said, well, I'll have to call him. And he'd already told me what I needed to know. He called me back in 5 minutes. He said, yeah. He says, how much you want to pay for it? And I said, how much is the ground rent? He says, I told you, the guy's not paying the ground rent. And I asked him, when he pays the ground rent, how much is he supposed to pay? He says, I'm not sure, somewhere right around, it's not less than $100,000 a year. It's right at $100,000. And so I said, I'll give him $1 million. That's a 10 cap. I offered him a 10 cap on the ground under a downtown office building, which ought to, in those days, or at that point, ought to have sold for about a 5 cap. He says, I'll call you right back. He called me within 30 seconds and said, okay, how do you want to pay for it? And I said, I don't want to pay, I'm thinking ahead. I know I'm going to refinance this property in November. What we're talking about is during the summer. I know I'm going to refinance this property in November, so I said, I'll give you $250,000 down, and I need a year to pay the rest. And you can charge me whatever you want to charge me. And he charged me 8%. Okay? So when I refinanced this property for all my partners, and they got all their money, or half their money back, I was one of the people that had money in that deal. I had $300,000 in it. I knew, or at least my partner and I, Claude Wolf and I, had $300,000 of money we had borrowed in shares in the deal, and so we were going to get $150,000 back. So I knew where I was going to get the money to go into this deal. So he said, okay, and that's what we did. So I bought it, and I bought the land, thinking that Leonard Marks, the 97-year-old, would pony up. Once he got somebody that was going to be aggressive about collecting, or we would repossess, he would pay me the money. And the money turned out to be about $370,000 with the rent that he owed over 2.5 years, plus penalties and interest. And you take $300 and something thousand off of $1 million. Now I've paid $700,000 for it. I'm getting $100,000 a year, $103,000 a year, which is a 17% return on a piece of land with an office building on it. Pretty safe, don't you think? Except that Leonard didn't cure, and I had to repossess it. And the repossession didn't take long, but then he appealed that, and it took 2 years to go through the appeals courts. And but during the time of the appeals, he had to pay me the $103,000 a year rent. So I went down to the bank that was occupying the ground floor of this building and borrowed $1 million. So we had our $250,000 back in our pocket, and we had enough money to pay the quarterly payments on our loan from the quarterly rent that we were getting from Leonard.